Archaeological evidence reveals that humans originated in Africa, specifically in southern Africa and the Great Lakes region, which is also the source of the Nile River. The Nile flows from the Great Lakes region into the Mediterranean, making it a crucial geographical feature for ancient civilizations. Studies suggest that this region is the cradle of humanity, from which our common ancestors emerged. Human migration patterns from these regions of origin, the Great Lakes and southern Africa, have shaped the historical and cultural development of Africa. This is not just a modern understanding, but is corroborated by ancient texts. Pharaonic records from ancient Egypt refer to these areas as sacred. The Egyptians called these regions Ta-Ncher, meaning the land of God, also known as Imana or Amen. And they considered them holy lands, often making pilgrimages there. These insights are drawn from a variety of archaeological and historical sources, including the works of renowned archaeologist Richard Leakey and Egyptologist Eric Hornung. Their research provides a deeper understanding of how ancient civilizations viewed and interacted with the African continent, illustrating the profound connection between these early human habitats and the development of complex societies. Our ancestors in the Nile Valley had profound reverence for Mount Kilimanjaro, situated in the Great Lakes region of Africa. To them, Kilimanjaro was not just a geographical landmark, but a sacred site they called the Holy Mountain, or the Sacred Mountain of God. Ancient texts, such as the Book of the Dead, refer to it as the Mountain of Manu, while the Book of What is in the Amduat describes it as the sacred pyramid that houses the divine Ka for eternity. The awe-inspiring shape of this mountain likely inspired the concept of pyramids, leading to their construction as monumental tombs for pharaohs and symbols of divine power. The journey of our ancestors from the Great Lakes region to Nubia and then Egypt followed the course of the Nile River. This journey underscored their connection to the high, sacred origins of the river. The Nile, flowing from these elevated regions, created a natural north-south orientation that influenced their perception of geography. In ancient Egyptian terms, Upper Egypt referred to the southern part of the country, which is upstream along the Nile, closer to its origins in the highlands. Conversely, Lower Egypt referred to the northern part of the country, downstream towards the Mediterranean Sea. This ancient geographical understanding contrasts with modern maps, which often depict south at the bottom and north at the top. The terms Upper and Lower Egypt reflect the ancient Egyptians' deep connection to the Nile's source and flow, illustrating their unique perspective on their land and its sacred geography. This reverence for the Nile and its source regions is documented in various historical texts and supported by archaeological evidence, providing insight into the spiritual and cultural foundations of ancient Egyptian civilization. The pyramids, symbolic of mountains, were not only tombs but also representations of the sacred geography that was integral to their worldview. With the current orientation of modern maps, it might seem as though the Nile starts in the Mediterranean and flows downward towards the Great Lakes region of Africa. However, this is a misunderstanding based on our current north-south perspective. When we reverse the map to place the Great Lakes and southern Africa at the top, everything aligns with the ancient worldview. The Nile flows from these high, sacred regions downward. In this orientation, Upper Egypt is correctly positioned above Lower Egypt. This represents Kemet, Kamita, or Kama, known as the Black Country, or the Land of the Blacks, the homeland of our ancestors. Our ancestors, who played a pivotal role in civilizing many peoples, held this perspective for a long time. Their understanding of the world, oriented around the sacred geography of the Nile, has had a lasting influence on the world's perception of Africa and its ancient civilizations. In the 12th century, the Arab geographer Al-Idrisi created a map that, according to ancient standards, depicted Europe below Africa, reflecting a different perspective from modern maps. This orientation was also used by the French cartographer Nicolas Deslians in his 1566 map, which is now preserved at the National Library of France. These maps illustrate an ancient worldview where what we now consider the southern regions were actually seen as the northern ones. This ancient geographical perspective might explain why the Zulu people in present-day South Africa are known as the people of heaven. The name Zulu translates to heaven, referring to what is above. In the context of our ancestors' worldview, the Zulu would be at the top of the continent, aligning with their name's meaning. This perspective highlights the rich cultural and historical context that shaped the way our ancestors viewed the world. Each culture represents the world according to its geographical position, perception, and interests, which means that not all cultures see the Earth from the same perspective. For example, ancient African maps often depicted regions differently than European maps. It's important to recognize that it's not natural for Africans to use the same world map as Europeans, as this ignores the unique geographical and cultural perspectives inherent to each people. The standardized maps we use today can obscure the rich diversity of perspectives that have historically existed across different cultures. Understanding and appreciating these diverse viewpoints can deepen our knowledge of history and geography. It reminds us that our current world map is just one way of seeing the world, shaped by particular historical and cultural forces. Acknowledging these differences allows for a more inclusive and accurate representation of our world. Would you like to explore how other cultures have historically represented the world in their maps? Click the suggested video. Until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.